I am 73 years old, my name is Ernesto, and for a long time I thought I was aging, when in reality I was giving up. There is a huge difference between those two things. Aging is natural, giving up is a silent decision that we almost never recognize. Let me ask you an uncomfortable question, not to scare you, to wake you up. Do you want to live more years, or are you letting the years gently push you towards the end without resisting? Because I was doing the latter without realizing it. No one explained it to me. No doctor looked me in the eyes and said, "Ernesto, be careful, it's not age that's dimming you." No, I discovered it on my own, and I discovered it late, although fortunately not too late. Today I want to talk to you about 3 decisions that seem small. So small that they go unnoticed, so normal that almost everyone justifies them. But if you are over 70, those 3 decisions can accelerate your decline without you noticing. And the third is the most dangerous because it leaves no visible marks. But first, I need to tell you how I realized it. 4 years ago, I retired from the mechanic shop where I worked almost my entire life. 38 years going in before the sun came up. 38 years lifting engines, changing parts, listening to the constant noise of tools. My body was tired, yes, but it was also used to moving. When I retired, I felt relief, a kind of reward. I thought, now it's my turn to rest, and resting was exactly what I did. At first it was pleasant. I woke up without an alarm. I stayed in bed for a few more minutes. I had breakfast calmly reading the newspaper. Then I sat in the armchair for a while. That while started to last an hour. Then 2, then all morning. I didn't notice it because the change was slow. It wasn't overnight. It was like a drop that always falls in the same place until it eventually pierces the stone. One Tuesday, I went to visit my sister Clara. She is 69 years old and has always been more restless than I am. She walks every day, participates in neighborhood activities, signs up for everything. When she saw me walking down her hallway, she looked at me attentively, and she said something that made me uncomfortable. "Ernesto, since when do you walk like that?" "Like how?" I asked her. "Dragging your feet, as if they were heavy." I laughed. I told her she was exaggerating, but that night, when I was climbing the stairs to my house, I had to stop halfway. I was short of breath. I felt my legs weak. It wasn't an illness. I didn't have any serious diagnosis. It was something simpler and more concerning. It was disuse. The first decision that ages you is confusing rest with immobility. We have been told our whole lives that after so much work we deserve to sit down. And it's true. We deserve it. But the body does not understand merit or retirement. The body responds to only one logic. What is not used is lost. And it is lost quickly. After 70, the loss of muscle mass accelerates in a way that very few people know. Specialists call it sarcopenia. But you don't need to know the technical name to feel its effects. You feel it when it's hard to get up from a chair without support, when you step down from a curb and hesitate, when you bend down to pick something up from the floor and there's a moment when you don't know if you'll be able to stand up easily again. That is not inevitable aging, it is accumulated disuse. And the most treacherous thing is that it happens in silence. It doesn't hurt, it doesn't warn. One day you simply realize that something you used to do without thinking now requires effort. And then you start to avoid it. And by avoiding it, you lose more. And by losing more, you avoid more. It's a cycle that feeds itself. I lived it. I started to avoid going out when it was cold. Then when it was too hot. Then when I simply didn't feel like it. And every excuse had its logic. Every excuse seemed reasonable. But the result was always the same. One more day without moving. One more day in which my body received the message that it was no longer needed. Because that's what the body interprets when we stop using it. It receives a silent instruction that says, "You are no longer needed," and it begins to dismantle itself with an efficiency that is frightening. Losing muscle is not just losing strength, it is losing balance, and with it, security. It is losing the ability to react when you trip. It is losing the confidence to walk on an uneven sidewalk, to climb stairs without holding on, to move through the world without fear. And when the fear of falling starts to dictate your decisions, the world becomes smaller and smaller. But there is something that science has been confirming for years that surprised me when I discovered it. Muscle, unlike other tissues, has a remarkable ability to respond to stimulus even in advanced ages. Not the same as at 40, not with the same speed, but it responds. The human body, at 70, at 75, at 80, is still capable of improving if given a reason to do so. I did not become an athlete. I did not start running or lifting weights. What I did was much simpler and much more sustainable. I started getting up every hour. Even if I had no urgent reason, I would stand up, walk to the window, look at the street for a moment, and come back. 5 minutes, 10 at most. But I was telling my body, I'm still here. I still need you. Don't fall apart. Then I added a short walk in the morning. Not fast, not long. Just going outside, breathing, moving my legs for 20 minutes. No goal, no specific destination, no pressure. Just walking. And little by little, without me actively seeking it, I noticed changes. Not spectacular, not cinematic, but real. The stairs stopped being an obstacle. I would get up from chairs without thinking. I slept better. And curiously, I had more energy during the day, not less. Because that is the great misunderstanding of rest. We think that by moving we expend energy. And yes, in the short term that's true, but in the medium term, movement generates energy. Circulation improves. Oxygen reaches the tissues better. Joints are lubricated. Mood lifts. The whole system works better when it is in use. The armchair seems comfortable. And it is, for a while. But if it becomes the center of your life, it stops being rest and becomes deterioration disguised as comfort. I'm not asking you to abandon it. I'm asking you to use it as a pause, not as a destination. Get up, even if you don't want to. Even if you have nowhere to go. Even if it's cold or hot outside. Get up and move, even if it's just for 10 minutes. Let your body know that you still count on it, because if you don't count on it, it will stop counting on you. And that moment comes much sooner than anyone expects. The second decision that ages you is continuing to eat as if your body were 40 years old. I'm not talking about diets or deprivation. I'm talking about something deeper, the disconnection between how we eat and how our body really functions now. For decades, food was fuel for a machine that never stopped. Waking up early, working for hours, expending energy, coming home with real hunger, having dinner with appetite, and sleeping deeply. That cycle made sense. The body asked, the body received, the body processed. Everything fit. But that cycle changed. And what many of us didn't adjust was the way we eat. After retiring, dinners at home became the most enjoyable moment of the day. My wife cooks extraordinarily well, and sitting together at the table without rush, with abundance, was one of the few things I felt I had earned. Meat, bread, something fried, dessert, coffee, at 10 o'clock at night or later. I went to bed satisfied. But my body did not rest. It spent the early morning working. I started waking up frequently, with a dry mouth, with a feeling of heaviness in my chest, sometimes with my heart beating faster than normal. In the mornings, I felt as if I hadn't slept at all, with a fog in my head that took hours to dissipate. And of course I attributed it to age. But it wasn't just age. It was the burden I was imposing on a digestive system that, over the years, works differently. After 70, the body produces less gastric acid, intestinal movements become slower, the liver takes longer to process certain fats, and the pancreas responds with less agility to spikes in glucose. None of this is a disease. It is simply the physiology of a mature body. But if we continue to ignore it and eat as if we were 40, the body pays the price every night. And that price is not just digestive. A heavy digestion interrupts deep sleep, which is the phase in which the brain clears the metabolic waste that accumulates during the day. It is the phase in which the heart slows its rhythm and truly rests. It is the phase in which the immune system strengthens and the body repairs what needs to be repaired. When that phase is interrupted night after night, the consequences accumulate silently. Memory becomes less agile. Mood is more unstable. Blood pressure rises, inflammation increases, and all of that is attributed to age when in reality it has a lot to do with what happens between 10 at night and 6 in the morning. What I started to do was not radical. I moved dinner 2 hours earlier. I reduced the amount of fat and refined carbohydrates in that last meal of the day. I left coffee for the morning. And I got used to having something light if I was hungry before sleeping, a fruit, a small dairy, something that didn't require heavy work from the digestive system. The change was not immediate, but after 3 or 4 weeks something settled. I slept more hours in a row. I woke up with more clarity. The morning fog almost completely disappeared, and curiously, during the day I had fewer cravings and less feeling of fatigue after eating. There is another thing I learned that I didn't expect. Hydration at this age is much more important than it seems, and much easier to neglect. As the years go by, the mechanism of thirst becomes less sensitive. We can be dehydrated without feeling thirsty. And mild but constant dehydration produces exactly the symptoms we attribute to aging: confusion, fatigue, headache, high blood pressure, constipation, dizziness. I started to drink water consciously, without waiting to feel thirsty. A glass when I wake up, another mid-morning, another with lunch, another mid-afternoon, without forcing, without excess, but consistently. And that also changed something. It's not about obsessing over food or turning every meal into a nutritional analysis. It's about recognizing that the body you have today is not the same as the one you had 30 years ago, and that it deserves to be treated with the intelligence that comes from experience, not with the habits that remained from another stage of life. Food can still be a pleasure, it should be, but a conscious pleasure, attuned to the body you are now, because that body, well cared for, still has much to give you. The third decision, the quietest and most dangerous, is to convince yourself that you have nothing left to contribute. It doesn't start with a conscious decision. You don't wake up one day and think, from now on, I'm going to isolate myself. It starts with small phrases that sound reasonable, phrases that even seem considerate, even generous. I don't want to bother. The kids have their lives. I no longer have anything interesting to share. Why should I call if there's nothing important? Those phrases seem like humility, but in reality, they are the beginning of a withdrawal. I said them without realizing. And with each one I reduced the circle a little more. Fewer calls, fewer outings, fewer real conversations. The television filled the space. The news became company. And the world, little by little, was reduced to what I could see from the armchair. What I didn't understand for too long is that the human brain is not designed for social stillness. It is built for interaction. It needs stimuli that it cannot generate alone. It needs questions that force it to seek answers. It needs the gentle friction of a conversation, the nuance of a friendly disagreement, the warmth of shared laughter, the weight of listening to someone who also needs to be heard. When that disappears, the brain starts to work on itself. It ruminates, it repeats, it reduces, and it does so gradually that we do not perceive it as deterioration, we perceive it as tranquility, but it is not tranquility, it is impoverishment. Science has been studying the relationship between social isolation and cognitive decline in older adults for years, and the results are compelling. Chronic isolation increases the risk of dementia, it deteriorates working memory, it weakens decision-making ability, it elevates inflammation markers in the body in the same way that tobacco or obesity does. It is not a metaphor, it is physiology. Sustained loneliness activates the same circuits in the brain as physical pain. The body processes it as a threat. And when the body constantly perceives a threat, it enters a state of chronic alertness that wears down the immune system, raises blood pressure, and accelerates cellular aging. I didn't know any of this when I began to withdraw. I learned it later, after I had already gone through it. One Sunday afternoon, while looking at the call history on my phone, I realized that I hadn't had a real conversation lasting more than 10 minutes with anyone other than my wife for weeks. Weeks. And the most unsettling part wasn't the number. It was that it hadn't hurt me, that I had normalized it without noticing. I called an old workshop colleague with whom I had shared years of work and from whom I had drifted away for no specific reason. Just because active life separates us and quiet life doesn't always bring us closer. We arranged to meet for a coffee that turned into 2 hours of conversation. We talked about things that matter and things that don't matter. We remembered difficult moments and absurd moments. We talked about our children, our fears, what we miss, and what we have found in this stage that we didn't expect to find. There were comfortable silences and unexpected laughter. I left feeling different, not younger, more whole. And I understood something that was uncomfortable to accept. I had more to give than I believed. I had stories that no one else could tell because no one else had lived them. I had a perspective built over decades that is worth something, that can guide, that can comfort, that can make someone laugh at just the right moment. I had presence, and I was saving it for no one. From there, I made small but concrete decisions. Calling someone every 2 or 3 days, not to say anything extraordinary but to keep the thread going. Accepting invitations that I had previously declined with excuses. Going out for walks on routes where I would encounter people. Entering a bakery and exchanging a few words with whoever was behind the counter. Recovering the habit of looking people in the eye and letting the conversation happen. Nothing spectacular. Nothing that required planning or superhuman effort. Just small decisions to open up against the natural tendency of isolation. Because that trend exists. It is not a character flaw. It is an inertia that sets in when the structure of work and active life disappears, and no one warns us that we need to build something new to replace it. No one teaches us how to retire from connection. And without us deciding, we gradually withdraw. The antidote is not forcing yourself to be sociable when you don't feel like it. It is recognizing that connection with others is not an emotional luxury. It is a physiological need. It is part of what keeps the brain alert, the body regulated, and the mood stable. As long as you are still able to look someone in the eyes and listen to what they have to say, you remain necessary. You continue to be part of the world. And that, at any age, is the opposite of giving up.